All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order at 6:03. Liz, Vicky is not here tonight. Are you able to take notes? Thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. All right, first thing on our agenda is public comment, so I'll open the floor up. If there's anyone who wants to issue a public comment. Not technically public.
This is usually the opportunity I take in the month of February to appreciate the board during February as Board Appreciation Month. So this is, I've said this a lot lately and it's been true every time. These are really challenging and unprecedented times. That has been true each of the last several years. And it is as true today as it has been in any year prior. So just a really heartfelt appreciation for the hard work that is often thankless and puts you in challenging positions in your community and you keep showing up month after month after month. So much appreciated. Thank you very much. We did thank courtesy of the MAUSD Food Service Collaborative. We have some apple crisp out next to the copier there. So at some point in time, I don't know if now's a good time or how you want to handle that, Aaron, but we have some delicious dessert for people to indulge in and be prepared to maybe take some home. There's a lot of it. Or challenge accepted, don't have any leftovers. Also a viable option.
Right.
But thank you very much.
Any other public comments? Anyone on Zoom have a public comment? Great, so take any opportunity you want to just pop out there and grab it. It's right over here. So, any opportunity. And thank you very much. All right, our next is an action item to approve the agenda from the last meeting. So may I have a motion, please? So moved. Meredith first. I'll second. Kristen second. And all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Okay. Next we have our consent agenda. Can I please get a motion for the consent agenda? So moved. Melissa first.
Second.
Justin second. Any comment?
I had one, just a question for Patrick. Was the resignation of the Beeman principal, is that something that was expected or maybe I missed something somewhere along the way?
It is something that has been in conversation for a while. Yeah, so I
Okay,
would say yes to that.
okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We'll move on down to executive limitations. So first we have our principals and building leaders here to lead us through a social and emotional learning supports presentation for MAUSD.
All right, I will turn it over to all of you. If you could just reintroduce yourself as you come up and present, that will help folks remember who you are and make those connections. And I will pull up on the screen the presentation so folks can see that. I'll share my screen as well so folks at home can see it.
And they're almost gonna have me stand alone. No, that's fine. That's okay. Shannon Warden, principal of Mount Abe.
Mike Lansing, Moncton principal.
Travis Park, principal Beeman. Aaron Boyd, principal at Bristol. Bill Haggett, assistant principal at Bristol.
I think Anne is on.
Yeah, Aaron's on Zoom.
And Aaron and Jason couldn't be here tonight.
And
Yeah.
Andy from Robinson was a little under the weather and also has class tonight and was going to try to be on Zoom, so he may pop on as well.
So I'll go ahead and get us started. You hear us talking about social learning a lot. You guys are asking questions about social and emotional learning. And when we started to put this presentation together, it was clear that we couldn't separate that out from our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of supports. So this is really kind of helping you understand how those two things work together, because in our schools, they don't operate in isolation. Next slide.
There, do you have a clicker? All right,
Somewhere?
sorry. Okay, so we were asked to present on SEL, social emotional learning within the district. So I think a good question is, what is SEL? If you were to Google it, you get a lot of different definitions of it. The one I found that applied what I thought the simplest and best was from the Child Mind Institute. Social emotional learning, SEL, is a term for the way children acquire social and emotional skills. It includes things like managing difficult emotions, making responsible decisions, handling stress, setting goals, and building healthy relationships. And kind of all that entwined together is SEL learning.
Never been perfect. Well, that's a good sign. That's happy noise right there. See if that works.
Next slide.
Oh, which
Well, as well.
next slide, Sid. You got a lot of clicking.
So it's important, when we're talking about SEL, that we are working with a wide span of students, and Mike will elaborate a little bit, but what he does with the kindergarten is probably not what I'm going to do with a 12th grader. So this is just a quote. Our job is to teach the students that we have, not the ones we'd like to have, not the ones we used to have, those we have right now, all of them.
So I think it's really important to, when you think about SEL and you think about all our schools, that every school is different. They have different situations, different people. Each school has their own unique characteristic due to variations in demographics, socioeconomic backgrounds, community context, and even the school building itself, making each learning environment distinct and requiring tailored approaches to support. So what you're going to see tonight is kind of a broad overview of things we have available to us. How they're applied and how each of us do it is a little bit differently due to all these different circumstances. But what you'll see is, we'll get some examples of what we would do in situations, but you'll see a lot of different things. And it's up to us to determine which which one from the basket we're choosing to apply to the situation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but everything you'll see is what we have available.
So every school has access to a series of supports that we map out in tiers. And I'm sure you've heard us talk about universal, targeted, and intensive. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and something that is important to note is that each time we add a layer or a tier, we're adding on, we're not skipping tiers. So a student, for example, who's receiving tier 2 supports are also getting tier 1 supports. A student that's receiving tier 3 or intensive supports are also receiving tier 2 or targeted and tier 1 universal.
Excellent.
Okay, so what we do is we usually start with our universal, which is going to be for all students. And something that's really important to understand is the positive behavior interventions and supports is in all of our schools. And I think that's really a framework for how we support students' social and emotional well-being, along with like really wraparound services of how we can support not just them, but our whole school. So we have school-wide expectations that we set. Each school has this. Each classroom sets up their own expectations. A few of the other things that I think are important is just our morning meetings. We have every morning, students gather in a circle, have an opportunity to share, go over a few different things that way. And then it also ties in with that. Really, I think that they are able to build that class. What do I want to say? But just really where they are able to kind of cohesiveness and come together as a class and as a school. We have like our transferable skills, personalized learning plans. We have our behavioral assistance, and we have attendance protocols. If you want to go to the next slide. There's also the crisis prevention, the CPI, where we kind of talked a lot about verbal de-escalation, how to help students that way. So we have whole bunch of other things, co-curricular activities, clubs, performances, our ELP program. We work with a lot of the law enforcement too, just in being out there like a Beaman. We have where we have our health fair, we have the police come, the ambulance, different agencies come together just for students to be familiar with that. And then so this is for all students, and then the next slide, we kind of get into more of a targeted. So if our students, if we're feeling like they need a little bit more, on top of what we give to everybody, we have where they can come together through the MTSS and we look to create student support plans. And that's kind of really targeted and focused on them, on how can we best support that individual student. Some of those are like our check-in, check-out systems, really where it's kind of real positive support on a regular basis, kind of check-ins with those students. We have our counselors that do quite a bit as well. And then we have our mentoring programs, social groups, SEL coaching support for teachers, and restorative circles to really help repair if needed, or just support all of our students, either in the classroom individually, or as a whole school. Those are just a few of those pieces.
So if we find the green, the universal supports aren't working through a number of different ways, and we'll review some later in this presentation, we then attempt to give them targeted support. These are some examples of that targeted support. But you're not going to get targeted support if universal support's working. So it's for the students who, for whatever reason, aren't making it work based on data that we have.
Well, and it's important to know that if a student is getting targeted, they're still getting universal, so it's just an added layer, so it's not that something would be going away.
And no idea why it says Burlington instead of Bristol Police, if you caught that, and we were just checking to see if you were paying attention, but that should have said Bristol. What about that?
So I have the next few slides, which is the intensive level. If you remember that triangle at the beginning, the tip top, 3% of our students fit this intensive level. So we're talking about very few students, but intense supports. So they're getting a lot at this level. Mike just talked about, in terms of like working your way up that triangle. If targeted isn't quite maybe working and there's still more question, we want to discover more, we want to find out more about a student. We might be looking at the IEP process, special education process. 504 plan is another support plan with students that might have medical disabilities or other intellectual disabilities. So I would say maybe more often students at this level have some sort of plan like an IEP or a 504. At the school level, when it comes to behavior support, a behavior intervention plan is going to be pretty typical at this level. And it's an intensive plan. It's also a pretty thorough and thick plan. It's going to be multiple pages long, but it's really going to guide every detail of what staff should be doing, the purpose of why we are doing this, whatever the particular intervention is. It's going to really detail what you're doing with that student. Functional behavior assessment, something that might be done as well. And this is when somebody that knows how to do them properly is trained to do them. It's going to do observations and really think about why is this behavior occurring. And that will help sometimes guide that behavior intervention plan. Other kinds of approaches at this level, a safety plan. We will probably see safety plan in other slides at this level. At the elementary level, at least, sometimes a safety plan might include something between students. Maybe an event occurred and there needs to be some parameters put in place to ensure that they're, maybe separated for a little bit and staff know how to navigate that. Threat assessment protocols, everything from the district level with all the work that's being done around school safety. We have threat assessment protocols, but even at the building level, if the student is displaying something or saying things that might heighten our awareness, we're going to act on that. Restorative conferences, I think similarly to restorative circles, restorative practices, where students are sitting down to understand what happened and how it affected others, and then what's gonna happen next. So it's not just like, all right, this happened, you have a consequence, but we're gonna sit and talk about. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about what happened, how it affected others. Put some closure to whatever happened.
And how to fix it too.
Yep. CPI again, Crisis Prevention Institute. There's different levels and layers to the CPI. It might be de-escalation like Travis talked about, or a little bit more restrictive where you're keeping others safe and keeping that student and adult safe. Things were to get a little bit more challenging. These are professional supports that we use throughout the district at the school level. Obviously, social workers and school-based clinicians are positions we have within the school. They work one-on-one with students, but also might have small groups. These other agencies and places are different things that we use. So CSAC, Counseling Center of Addison County, is probably one of the most utilized agencies that we use. Some of our schools have in-house clinicians that work with students all week, which is great. Balanced and Restorative Justice, Green Mountain Behavior Consulting. Folks here have BCBAs, which can help with those functional behavior assessments and those intensive plans. So that's a really great resource to be able to utilize folks from Green Mountain to help us out. Flexible Pathways, Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, and GCF, obviously, a pretty big factor in family lives and student lives, and that partnership often happens as we support kids. I think I want to. Again, so crisis response, intensive level. If we think about, as you read down these bullets, the severe importance of these kinds of things. I mean, here we're talking about self-harm. Students are displaying, talking about, or showing levels of self-harm. There's strict protocols and procedures in place to ensure that we are addressing it. So here are some of the things that we would do. A risk screener is going to happen instantly to make sure that, right, is what you're saying, do you mean it? And through those different questions, typically with a counselor, we really want to see, what's the student really thinking in this moment. This is something we have to act a little bit more strongly on by referring them to our access program, community agency referrals, to really get them a more significant high level of help that they might need in the moment. The access program is kind of like the SEL ER in my opinion. Emergency response, obviously, any safety response from our typical safety responses to behavior safety responses are things that we have in place and practice. And that would include, anything that might be something that might stem from a risk screener. So if a student is displaying self-harm tendencies, what are we following the steps to ensure that they're getting support? Intensive individual support can mean a lot of things, I guess. And then family collaboration. Obviously, at this level, we're in strict communication with families, so they know, what we're seeing at school and how we can help the family get what that child needs. And I think the other thing too I wanted to mention is, if a student is kind of at this level, like what does the day-to-day look like? So there's that, staff awareness at the right level to know, right? We have a student that is having some challenges. What are we kind of keeping an eye out for? And what should we do if we, hear or see something that we have a concern about?
All right, now we're gonna get a little more interactive because that's what teachers do. We're gonna do a tabletop exercise. Has anybody ever participated in a tabletop exercise? So a tabletop exercise, we utilize them in schools with outside agencies for emergency preparedness, but basically it's running through a scenario. There are some rules there. I'll be the moderator, just the facilitator of conversation. Your role is to answer, ask each other questions and kind of problem solve whatever is put in front of you. You have to stay within the scenario. So what is presented to you at that moment, that is all the information that you have. And then the scenario or the situation will evolve, but you can't change any of it along the way. Got it? Okay.
Good, so we can see the board members that are on.
Find that balance of that and. Seems
These are not uncommon scenarios, right?
They are not uncommon scenarios. All right. So the student is in 4th grade during literacy instruction and practice. The teacher observes tapping a pencil, talking with peers, and the student moving around the room. What strategies would you use to redirect the student?
Mark together?
Yep. Share with the whole group, because you're problem solving this as a whole.
Oh. I might just like grab an envelope from my desk and say, hey, can you deliver this to Miss Shannon down the hall and get him up and moving?
Okay, so distraction and movement.
Ask them a question about what we were talking about.
Yep.
Pull them into whatever literacy instruction that might be engaged.
Yep. Try to redirect them back by pulling them in somehow. Yep.
I might actually pull the kiddo out before literacy starts and go do some high energy movement, something to get the vestibular system back into a regulated state before asking them to attend to what's going on in the classroom.
So be a
And
little
then
proactive.
dose them in and out, depending on how much they were able to do that day.
Any other thoughts? We don't expect you to know. If you tap the next slide, Patrick, we'll give you some ideas. So nonverbal cues, we really like nonverbal cues like the look. Proximity, moving into a student's space, moving out of a student's space. Providing clear, structured expectations. We use the PBIS system, so rewarding students for positive behavior. I was gonna reward you with points today and I forgot.
We have Apple Chris.
There you go. Now you all get 1 spoonful. Okay. Now you're working for 2. Implementing just a check-in with that student briefly, walk away, check back in with them, walk away. That student may need to be moved, maybe their seat is distracting, and then thinking about other ways to incorporate reading, like maybe that the actual reading isn't working for the child that day. Maybe they need something else, maybe they need to listen and follow along. Okay, so we see some increased frustration from the student, and they are now tearing some pages out of the book and making some loud comments. Would you change any of your strategies? Okay. So pull them out, have a conversation. Yep. Their thoughts or suggestions? Ideas, there's no bad answer, there's no wrong response.
The dysregulated student. And something is up, like no 4th grader is just gonna tear pages out of a book for the fun of it, so. I probably get the rest of the class doing something either small group or whole group and. Talk to this kid and see what's up.
Yep, definitely asking why. Next slide. This gives you some ideas. Acknowledging the frustration sometimes is all a kid needs is they need you to know that they're really frustrated or discouraged. So just acknowledging that sometimes helps get that conversation going. Let's take a moment. You take that moment outside in the hallway, take a breath, tell them come back in when you're ready. Again, alternative text, if there's frustration around the text, that can help alleviate some of that. Self-regulation strategies, hey, why don't you take a deep breath? Why don't you take a walk around the classroom? A lot of teachers have buckets or baskets of different fidgets that sometimes help with kids' frustration when they're focusing on things. And you can see the, all the other ones that are there. Provide a quiet space is something that a lot of teachers do, is they have a spot in the classroom, like a regulation area that kids can go to kind of take that mental break. And that's something that we do at the middle and the high school as well. And you can also change the reading expectations. Hey, just read this part. Why don't you just read this part, and then I'll come back and check with you. Okay, next slide. Well, now the behaviors escalate. They stop for a minute, but now they've heightened. Now the student is marching around, being unkind to people, and is exhibiting defiant behavior. What would you change in your approach?
Those might be a counselor. Someone to talk to that's different than the teacher.
Yep, so you might need somebody else to provide some support and intervene, definitely.
I'm a former special ed teacher and I feel like I'm talking a lot. So keep going. No, you're good, you're good. If they're being unkind to peers and being defiant and moving around, and we've done everything or some combination of things that have been listed so far, and it's still not working, I like probably take them out of the classroom, give them a minute to cool down, depending on the severity. Like, do we do office discipline for girls here?
I think we all do in some form.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Document that. And thank the rest of my class for not being disrupted by everything that's going on.
It'd be really challenging, right? Really challenging. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead, Barb.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I don't think I would leave my class. I would call someone in and, see if that student might have, another resource to kind of bounce things off and see what's going on before they re-enter.
And sometimes what we do, you can change the slide. Sometimes what we do is have somebody come into our class so that we can go out and chat with the students. Since we're the ones trying to develop that relationship and rapport, we assigned the task. We're the ones that need to try to troubleshoot what's getting in the way for that student to help them be successful. Depending on the student or in general, a pre-established crisis plan. So it could be calling the office for support, sending somebody else. If there's a social conflict, depending on what it is, that peer mediation. So certainly what you said, thanking other students and teaching them some coping skills as well, is important. If the student may need some task modification, restorative conversation once they're ready to come back in, which Barb mentioned, not having them come back in till they were ready. Here, movement shows up again before returning, which Erin mentioned earlier. And as I said, just asking the question sometimes, like what's difficult, what's hard right now? What's getting in the way? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And trying to navigate that and figure out how best to get the student to engage. That will also give you an idea of, do they need more support than I can give right now in a quick, minute or two conversation in the hall? It may be that they need to check in with a school counselor or school-based clinician because it's not even the reading, it's something that happened at home before they came in. All right, got better for a little while. And now we're knocking over some chairs and we've left the classroom. We're in the process of heading out, knocking down chairs. What might you do now? It's interesting, all your faces changed.
I was gonna say call for backup.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just like, what are the resources?
Yep, so definitely call for support. Any other thoughts? The tough one. Tough one. You wanna move the slide, Patrick? Oh, Liz has her hand up. Oh, go ahead, go back. so she can't see the answer. Go ahead, Liz.
I think simple language and options. It's just something that I lean towards. Just really so. And it's interesting because if they're knocking over chairs in the classroom, my understanding is that we're separating the rest of the class from them and leaving them be in that classroom. Perhaps you might have to take your classroom into a different space. And if they're leaving the classroom, making sure that somebody is keeping their eyes, that they're knowing where they're going or what they're up to out in the hallway and not leaving the school. I don't know. Thanks for the exercises, though. I appreciate it.
So I definitely hear calling for support, no matter what, right? Go ahead, Patrick. So you do need to ensure the safety of all students. So if the student hasn't left yet, getting the rest of your class out and somewhere safe is priority number one. If they're on their way out, you might close your door so they can't come back in while you're calling for support for somebody else to make sure that they have eyes on that student, like Liz recommended. And then you follow your school plan, whatever that may be. And as Mike said, sometimes they're a little bit different because your facility is different, your staffing is different. What do you do if so-and-so's out? We haven't experienced that at all this year. Everyone's been here every single day. Allow the student space to exit safely. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Liz, giving choices like, hey, do you need to go take a break before it gets to this point? Always a good idea. And then afterwards, once calm, there's going to have to be some sort of reflective conversation about what happened, what got in the way, and how we're not going to do that again. And working with the student on those self-regulation strategies, which can take a long time, and a lot of patience.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
In this process, who's checking in with the rest of the children in the class?
It depends if they have anybody else in the class or not. If not, it's just the teacher, unless they've called for support already at one of the other levels of when things started to escalate. So there could be a para. They
So there's
could call for a behavior assistant to come down or an administrator.
It would be post-event, right? And it depends, in a fourth grade, depending on how big the event was. Like, you're making sure the class is safe, you're making sure the student who's escalated is where they need to be, and admin came in, et cetera. And then when appropriate, like, you can address the class. If it's a huge giant situation, like they're whipping chairs across the room and yelling and screaming, like, you're probably gonna have the counselor come in, maybe the principal, you're gonna sit down, talk to the class and go through it. Principal maybe calls parents, who knows? If it's a smaller event, like in fourth grade, there's a homeroom, you meet after lunch, like maybe you do something a little smaller. How is everybody doing, checking in, et cetera. Like, one of the things to keep in mind is like, this is all, like, this can go a million different ways. Like, has this happened before? Wait, what does knocking over chairs look like? Like, what's your relationship with the kid? Do they have a special adult somewhere? If this is the first, just all these things, which makes this so challenging because it sounds simple, but it's not simple. And that, you know, if it's happened if the kid's just knocking over chairs and happened 10 times, like, the class probably isn't as intimidated or nervous as it would be if this kid was chucking chairs at the teacher. That's a really different situation. And you gotta kind of take what you got, use the skills you have, use what you have, and make the best you can. But certainly you're not gonna check in with the class mid-situation. That would, you wouldn't be able to pull that off. So when everybody's safe, when that child is where they need to be with whoever they need to be with, you can then find a time that makes sense to check in with the class.
We often, after an incident, and I want to finish this up, we'll have an administrator or school counselor go in to do a restorative discussion with everybody, just to kind of talk about what it feels like to be safe. What do you do if you don't feel safe? How do we help each other feel safe? Things like that, so that the loop gets closed. Next slide. So this is where the system comes in. So questions that you're probably wanting answers to, and that we do, as well as the practitioners, are: what happens now? Is there a way to prevent this? Who gets additional support? Who needs it? And what do we do in schools when this sort of thing can be happening in more than one classroom at one time, and obviously our goal is to prevent it from happening again, even if it happens once, how do we prevent it from happening again? Next slide.
All right, so we're gonna talk about some other things. And Patrick, I wonder if you can move the column to the other side of the screen.
Could I ask just a quick question?
Yeah.
Just before we get into this one, and sorry if I missed it, apologies for being late, it's a little stuck, but so this MTSS system seems really great in that it can be really proactive.
Yeah.
And it can also seem to provide really nice restoration after the fact, right? So the first part of the presentation and the sort of universal target intensive sort of outline proactive and somewhat long-term reactive, kind of to your last slide. I guess I was wondering your thoughts on its role in the moment, right? Does MTSS play a role in this tabletop scenario that the teachers are playing? Like, is there something unique to MTSS in terms of how you're dealing with an incident at the time, apart from all of the skills that maybe you've tried to impart to the student beforehand, or what you might do afterwards?
So I think it's really about the strategies, and we could list individual strategies in all of these tiers. And it would just go on and on forever. But I think kind of the important ones to notice are when things ratcheted up, how you've got more options. So like we ask teachers to deal with things at a universal level, you know, tapping a pencil, that sort of thing, some obnoxious behavior perhaps. And then as things start to escalate, to call in for support, and that might be somebody stepping in so the teacher can step out with a student or group of students, or just giving the teacher a break and stepping in and taking that kid in a walk. We have a number of students who sometimes they just need a walk. We will have somebody walk with them just for conversation, redirect their brain, get them regulated and back to class. So teachers have all of those tools in their kits, and we are building our capacity of people who are CPI trained, which is the verbal de-escalation, because then that adds to your toolkit even more. So just some of those, the strategies that we put up there are not a completely exclusive list. Like you can put many, many more under alt. So these are system-wide things, but then teachers have their own individual strategies too, that would fall under each tier.
So universal, the green, right? Every school, so I can speak to elementary schools really well, obviously, right? Every elementary school has some sort of behavior system. Like if you do this, you know, here's your first warning, or that's a universal strategy in the moment. If I have a kid who does X, the school has a system to do Y, hopefully it stops it, right? Like we have a reinforcement system, the coin system, the link system that you see, that's an in the moment system to do something. If a student's at the targeted level, like they may already have a behavior plan, you can follow that immediately. They may already have some people involved in a safety plan or other adults involved. Like you can use those at the time based on the kid and its history of what's gone on in that kid's life. Intensive would be the same thing. There may be a big safety plan involved where if this happens, you must do X, Y, and Z. And that's your in the moment move kind of regardless. The hard ones are like when it's a out of nowhere kid, right? Like, whoa, I've never seen you do that before. What's going on? You know, we can use some of that universal stuff, but probably not. Let's get people safe and let's move forward. But when there's already plans in place, it works really well. And there's just kind of these broad stroke systems that we have to hopefully help the universal level.
And I was gonna say too, some students at that tier 3 level that are on an IEP have a EA support, one-on-one support. It's not anything we've really had in this presentation now that I think about it, but we talk about those intensive plans. Those folks are responsible in the classroom, lunch, recess, whatever it might be, in the hallway to ensure that those are being followed through. So they have one of the hardest jobs in the building, our EAs that are working with our hardest kids. And that's just another piece, like in the moment in the classroom. It's not just like teacher and radio. You might have another adult in there that is working with that kid that might be trying strategies to calm or redirect or whatever. So
Sure, thanks. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, there's lots of strategies. So let's talk about using some data systems we have. It's gonna be this is a little funky because part of it's blocked or it's hard to read. So we'll do our best to get through it. So what this slide says is, how would we identify a student that receives universal or targeted support? So we really have two ways, the MTSS system and then our school-wide information system. It's called SWIS. That's what that stands for. And that is where we monitor a lot of things. If there's incidents, if we want to track data, that's kind of the program that we use to do that. So next slide, sir. So this slide says, how can SWIS support our approach? How SWIS can support our approach to support? So this is behavior data that I pulled from my school, from Moncton Central School. And this is from December to the 12th of February. And so you can see, these are all referrals that happened during that time. And you can, this is just like an example of data SWIS can give us. You see the most we had were defiance, contact, disruptions, et cetera, et cetera. Some of that's subjective. It's a little dependent on the human putting it in, but what is true is something occurred. And so it's kind of, you can look at the data a lot of different ways. Usually it's pretty good. Next slide, please. So data you can use. So I'm going to use it. Let's do a real example. So next slide. All right, so this says, well, I don't know what it says. So, okay, so the same time period, I'm just gonna show you examples of that time period, right? So like, this is what we do. Each school has like a data day, where everybody has a data team, you look at it, you review it. Like the occurrence in which you are looking at data is really different in each school. Might be monthly, might be weekly, might be bi-monthly, kind of whatever, it's up to the principal. So here are some things that we look at. So referrals by day of the week. Okay, cool, that paints you a picture. Next slide. We got a bunch coming up. Referrals by grade. Okay, there's an obvious discrepancy. Kindergarten has way more than, let's say, 4, 5, 6. Next slide. Great, referrals by location. Wow, there's a ton in class versus the playground, hall, office, gym, etc. One in art. Great job, Art, right? Next slide. Referrals by time. These are pretty good. You see a funky, weird 2 a.m. That means that what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to put the time the incident occurred. If you're like at night, you're like, crap, this person, I remember I got to put this in. It's 2 a.m. I just woke up, I did it. And you don't switch the time on the program. It shows up as it occurring at 2 a.m. That's why it's there, but it was an incident. But you can see a lot of them occur, you know, between that 10 and 1 o'clock time, which has some meaning to it. Next slide. And I think this is the last one here. And you can tell again, it's looking at a lot of defiance and contact. This is the original slide. So it just gives you a lot of different ways to look at your school and you can make some choices from there. So next slide, please. And the referrals by student, right? This is one that I particularly like. This is identified, you can't see, there's no names here. It's like by their identification number is usually how it does it. But you can tell there are some students that spiked at 32, at 27, at 14. And this is all for that time period, right? And then it goes all the way down. And so those are all the kids out of those 100 and whatever, 60 referrals. These are the students that had those referrals. Next slide. So applications is something we really did at Moncton. So we looked at our November data and we said, man, what are we noticing about the data at this point? And so we noticed that, hey man, Monday, we have a lot more, in November, we had a lot more referrals on Monday than we had any other day of the week. We also noticed that 33, which is kind of the lower right, is for obtaining peer attention. So it says OB space P space attention. So that's obtaining peer attention. So we're like, hey man, we got a lot of referrals happen on Monday. We believe it's kids who want to get attention from their friends. What can we do about it? And so if you go to the next slide, what we did was we did a 6-week universal plan. And Justin will know this because this kid goes to my school, is that every Monday, we had an AM recess and it shifted a little bit time-wise because it affected some core times. We tried to be fair, but basically the idea was the kids were going to come to school, eat really fast, and then go outside, hopefully get their peer attention out of the way, hang out, whatever. The whole school's out there, all the staff, everybody, they do it, they work, they go, and then they line up. It was a 15-minute additional recess. Based on that data, tomorrow we're going to meet as a staff to talk about it. I'm going to crunch the data after this presentation to see, like, did it make a difference? Did it not? I don't know. But we knew it was an idea that we could try that I think made sense based on what that data told us. So an idea of a universal approach to solving a problem that we saw in November. Next slide, please. Okay, so how does targeted SEL support happen, right? That was just universal. So this is again, that original slide from that from the December to February 12 data, and hit the arrow, please. And so if we look deeper, one more time, if we look deeper, we're gonna look at that 27. Obviously, this is a student who had a lot of referrals. And so what's going on, right? And we would do this with, I think, a lot of the kids who reached a certain level, in my mind, but we'll take a peek at this kid. So, all right, what's going on? Like, he's got a lot of, or he or she have a lot of referrals. Let's peek. So if you go next. So we're gonna take a peek at 3 different things. Okay, so number 1, obviously, I think it's clear that they had 17 in-class behavior occurrences. So that's a key for us. Next slide. Yeah, one more time. Yeah, next one. There you go. Yeah, I did double. That was a presenter error. The next one is escape task, and you can't see, but it's like, it's high. The escaping the task is much higher than any other reason we believe they got a referral. Next slide. And the next one was defiance. So we have occurrences are happening in class. There's an escape, that they're trying to escape something and they're being defiant. And so those are our 3 keys. And so we decided as a school, let's take those 3, let's make a plan based off of kind of our targeted supports, and how can we craft a plan for the student that addresses defiance, escaping, and in the classroom. And from that, we'll make a plan, we'll talk about it, we'll meet it, we'll craft it, we'll execute it, and we hope it works, right? As we do this plan, as it goes along, we tweak it, we change it, we do a lot of things to hopefully get those referrals down. But this is like a good example of when you have a behavior, when you have a student with elevated behavior, you can look at some data and you can make a targeted plan that hopefully works with the things that we're noticing. Next slide, please. So again, some of the things we could do for this student, we could do a support plan, we could do a check-in, check-out system. That's a really common one. That's when they have a clear behavior, like a light behavior plan. They meet with an adult in the morning. There's a reward that they can earn, that they choose if they have a great day based on these expectations. If they do it, they get the reward, and they're, they get some reinforcement for not doing the behavior or doing desired tasks. Counselor-led group sessions, MAUSD mentoring program, dream mentoring, social groups, SEL support for teachers, admin, BAs, counselors, kind of whoever needs it for the situation, and then restorative circles. But again, it's always going to be different depending on what you're noticing with each kid. Next slide. And there's other things, right? Like I just listed behavior stuff. There's always other reasons you can give targeted support, right? I just found these pictures online, right? You could have bullying, you could have a family tragedy, divorce, you could have some sort of housing crisis, you could have kids being sad for a litany of reasons. They may need additional support that is beyond the universal based on something that's happened in their life. And that doesn't come up on the Swiss stuff because it's hard for me to type in divorce, in our Swiss system. It doesn't work that way. So we're always trying to figure out ways to determine kind of outside that behavior realm, like what's going on. There's a lot of ways we can do it that we listed in the universal area to kind of probe and dipstick and figure it out. But if it reaches the level where we think they need support, like boom, up you go.
And really the biggest thing is knowing our student and building relationships with them. And that is something that MAUSD does far better than districts that I've worked at before to really understand the something else is and often that behavior.
Next slide. And so how would a student receive intensive SEL support, right? So a student is already receiving targeted support generally. And they're of course receiving universal as well. Additional support is needed based on collected data or like an extreme event occurs. Leading to an intensive need, like let's pretend a parent dies. Well, I may need to get a CSAC clinician in immediately. That's an intensive support. It's a unique example. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen too. And then the appropriate team meets. We discuss options and we take action based on the data we have. If my behavior student I talked about, if that escalates, if it gets worse, if it's not going well, and I have the data to show that, I may need to work with a BCBA. I may need to call Beth. I may need to do all these things to get this child additional support that isn't being met at the target level based on what I'm bringing in for data. And of course, some of this could be a 504 plan development, IEP referral, restorative conferences, behavior intervention plan, a safety plan. The FBA would help you get a behavior and possibly a safety plan, a threat assessment. Using mental health professionals, those are big. And then, of course, using our CPI, our restrictive CPI tools and techniques that we've learned through that program.
So that's really how we put it together, our system of SEL instruction first, but all the way up to what do we do reactively and then backwards proactively to kind of close that loop. The biggest thing, as I said, knowing our students and knowing that all behavior is a form of communication, and it's our jobs to figure out what that student is trying to communicate, and it is more often than not a need that isn't being met. So we get to be detectives as well, that all the hats that we wear to try to figure that out. Next slide. So overall, our framework, our process, and our collaboration, we use data-driven decision-making to inform plans, choices that we make in terms of intervention, even in the moment. Regular progress monitoring, SWIS being one, grades, behavior plans, the Chico data. We use a team approach to problem solve any of these situations. Nothing is done in isolation. Continuous assessment and ongoing assessment to see how things are working, not just the progress monitoring, especially if we are going up the triangle. We may need more information at each step beyond the data that we have. And the family engagement and community partnerships are really essential to our success as well. So we have for you an exit ticket. So what is something that you found surprising? As a board member, something that I'm proud of, maybe something new that you've heard some of this, and then what is something that you'd like to know more about? And we will collect those, so if there are questions, we can compile those questions and get answers back.
While you're doing that, may I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Could you define defiance for me? What does that look like? What does that mean?
I mean, they are, I don't know, in a two-sentence explanation, they are making a choice not to do the behavior that's asked of them by the adults in the room.
So it could be simple or it could be very complicated.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. That's right.
And the other question I had is, who takes the lead in the data collection around a student?
Well, so every school is probably a little different, right? So each teacher is, you hope, is expected to put the data in on their child, that if an event occurs in their classroom, they are expected to put in the behavior. I think unless there are some other situations that deem different, as other adults get involved, they may be asked to put in the behavior as well. And then, of course, if there's a major behavior, we have minors and majors. If it is deemed a major behavior, it's got to go through administrative approval for that too. So if a kid punches another kid, if a chair is thrown, if we believe it reaches a major level, the administrator, it can't go into the system until the administrator approves it. But each school is going to be a little different, Kathy. Like, here's an example, like at Moncton, I put in all the recess behavior referrals, all of them. They come to me, they tell me about them, I put them in. And that's a Moncton thing. It may be different at a different school. I think whatever works for your school to get the data in. Like where it fails is when the data doesn't go in. And so similar to our practice, each school may find that one way works a little bit different than another school, but you got to get the data in. If a teacher is struggling to put the data in, how can we support them? You know, what do you do? Write on a sticky note, tell me verbally, I'll put it in, whatever. The point is it's got to go in. If it doesn't go in, all this stuff I showed you doesn't show up. It's hard to give them extra support if we can't prove it's happening. And that's always a challenge at each school.
And one of the things I heard you say is that each school collects data differently.
Yeah, so the frequency at which the school's behavior or your data team meets is probably a little different. So my team may meet every 2 weeks. Beamon's may meet every month. It's kind of up to the school to look at that behavior data. Certainly every 4 weeks, a grade levels meeting for MTSS. A part of that is to reviewing it as well. But you may have an overarching behavior team that meets at an interval, and it's different for each school, and they review the whole data, the whole school data.
So for us to look at it as on a district-wide level, if every school is collecting data in a different way, we have really no foundation for understanding how effective some of these systems are or what additional supports are needed.
I don't think we're collecting it in a different way. I think, like classroom behaviors, all teachers are entering classroom behaviors in our school. Like whoever sees something in the hallway is going to enter in that data. If a student's on a Chico, each teacher or each block of time that student is being monitored, that person is responsible for entering the behavior. Once we start creating targeted or intensive plans, it's decided as a team who's collecting what behavior to then come back and progress monitor. So I wouldn't say that it's being entered differently, but the mechanisms in which we look at anything beyond the student data might be a little different. For example, we're really large, so we have multiple data teams. We look at school-wide data as a whole faculty and staff, but we also have attendance teams who just look at attendance. We have a PBIS team that just looks at the referrals, and then we have our MTSS team that looks at grades, referrals, and attendance after it's kind of been disaggregated a little bit for us. But that's because of our size.
Right, so we're asking these smaller schools to collect data on the same level, is that correct?
All schools or all classrooms that have a behavior, that teacher will enter in that information into that Swiss. So it's collected all the same. So any adult in any of our schools that have a behavior situation, it's their responsibility just to enter that into the system. And then how we look at it as a school or as a team or as a class, that's where how often or how they meet might be a little bit different, but every teacher is expected, or every adult is expected to enter that.
Thank you.
Now just offer to board members on Zoom, if you want to send me your responses to these questions, I'll make sure the team gets them. Just to simplify that process a bit.
Is there time for another question, or should I just write it down and?
No, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much. What an amazing presentation, and our students are so lucky to be part of such a comprehensive MTSS plan. This is better than anything that I saw when I was a teacher, and I was a special ed teacher focused primarily on students with behavioral disabilities. So absolutely outstanding work. I would love more information on ongoing training and support for our teachers. One thing that I'm sure you've heard, and I know we've all heard, is that since COVID, teachers are feeling overwhelmed by behaviors that have been coming up in the past couple of years. And as a board member, it would be really helpful to know more about how we're continuing to help our teachers as the needs of our students change.
Bill can talk a little bit about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, first off, it's been mentioned before, Bill Huggett, but crisis prevention intervention is one of the things our goal is to have every teacher go through every 2 years de-escalation training, because we all run across kids throughout the day, regardless if you're a frontline administrative assistant, teacher, special ed teacher, gym teacher. And one of the goals for CPI, one of the goals is we're working through training, which we're probably about up to 150 of the staff members that have been trained at the verbal de-escalation, not the restrictive, not the hold, not disengagement, but that is a plan to kind of work through every staff member. We're starting with the newest staff members. We're working our way through on a monthly basis. Myself and Rebecca Brinton is also a trainer on that. That is something that is critical, so that when you run into those situations, we're all not needlessly escalating the behavior. And so that's one of the things that we're working on to try and work through all staff members so that the kids get a common experience. And then as needed, like the administrators, last month went through and some others, targeted staff go through more holes, disengagements, things that provide that set of training, that help support those staff members. So we're doing the same thing and we're doing it safely as needed and as little as possible with that, but also to, ensure a positive experience for the kids. And then also, one other thing that I know has been offered throughout the district, at various times, Dave Melnick, offered some training, for trauma, and I think that's been offered through the district, and then will continue to be offered that to support the staff, so that as those kids come through the door, and present these types of, needs, we can meet their needs, successfully, and then also, meet the needs that we need as adults, so.
Thank you.
There's also a lot of professional learning that happens in our MTSS meetings when we're talking about specific kids and brainstorming and strategizing ways to support a kid that might be a little more individualized, thinking outside of the box, or just something somebody hadn't thought of before. I would say the same thing happens when we're looking at school-wide data and we're all choosing a behavior that we're gonna focus on, like the recess, like we're all committing to that. I remember we were doing when we were having a lot of skips and kids just kind of lollygagging into class a minute or two. So we all decided we were gonna focus on that. Well, then what does that look like? So I'm gonna stand in my doorway, I'm gonna stand down, at the T in the hallway, that sort of thing. So there's that ongoing professional learning that happens. And then in one of the slides, we also talked about teachers that just need more support with a particular class or a student, is that somebody will come in and help sort of coach or co-teach together and model different ways to interact with that student to increase positive outcomes instead of negative ones.
Yeah, so part of that like intensive level support, if you get there, like if you're working with a BCBA who's like a behavior super consultant, like they're going to work with you to help write a plan, to train you how to do it, et cetera. I think every school has a PBIS system. We're required to by the state, right? So we all reinforce undesired behaviors, then reinforce desired behaviors, right? The kids chirping, like, and you want them to raise their hand. When they raise their hand, you reinforce that, right, through positive means. Every single school has to have some sort of behavior plan in place, like a universal one, like X, Y, and Z occurs. Like those are things that you get trained on as a staff. You review it every year, you go through it. I think what is important to remember, and you should hopefully remember this when you're in the classroom, is like every school has different kids. If I have disability X that results in behavior Y, like I'm gonna have to react and train certain people appropriately for that. I may need to have to let the whole staff know, like, this is occurring. We got this new student, you gotta know about it. Like, I want you to be prepared. Here's what we do. Like, that may only be a month in. Each principal comes with different histories and backgrounds and trainings that we infuse and teach our own staff too. So, every school has its own look and its own system, but we can rely on as many people as we can within our framework to make it happen.
Some things might not be like, for training people, it might just be doing tier 1 consistently.
Yeah.
So we're all speaking the same language. I mean, if we're putting our energy into that versus energy and money into like some type of training or something coming down, we're gonna go further by having consistent expectations, language, vocabulary, way teachers talk to each other, way teachers talk to kids. It's gonna go further than in helping reduce behaviors. And the types of like training.
So I guess I just have one like sort of umbrella question that relates to our budget. And just wanted, the reason we asked for this presentation was because we had during this budget cycle removed some money from the budget that was allocated to positions that were for SEL type positions. And so out of all this presentation, and I'm looking for your opinion as people in the school doing the work, with what we have, should there be any concern about monies coming out that were allotted for that type of role? Or do we think this system is robust and healthy and functioning at a level where teachers, staff, everyone in the building can do their jobs well and feel like we're meeting need?
I think part of it is not just like, is it enough, but are there people willing to, apply? And I had 3 unfilled currently, like 1 unfilled that we just had to shift and shuffle. just people aren't applying. I think I still have an SEL thing posted. There's just nobody to do it. So there's like that reality. And I guess, I mean, that's just one point.
And some of it's strategy too, right? Like really focusing on the universal, like Aaron said. So like that helps build capacity. And then you train more teachers on how to do a Chico. That builds capacity. So I think we have those opportunities to build capacity from within. And we've all made adjustments to what staffing we haven't had because of lack of hiring. So but for me, my position, I think we're okay right now. Could we always use more? Yes. And it's very similar to, could we all use a bigger house? Yes. And then you're gonna fill that space. So then you're gonna get a bigger house, then you're gonna fill that space. So it has needed, we've had to do some shuffling and that sort of thing. But I think for us right now, it's working.
I think what I'm hearing is, yeah, it's certainly working at Mount Abraham. You have a much larger faculty to draw from. When I'm looking at our elementary schools, I'm not hearing that it's working, and I'm hearing that shuffling is difficult and that it's not the answer. You know, it's sort of like putting a Band-Aid on a cut and hoping it'll heal. You know, I am concerned that cutting any more positions, if we don't have the funding there, we can't even advertise for those positions. So I am worried that you all are having to do an awful lot above and beyond with this MTSS system and others to make sure that the needs of the students are being met. But the bottom line is we don't have, especially in the elementary schools, enough bodies to provide a safe and really fruitful environment for every child, that we're having to scramble to do that.
And Kathy, that's what we heard at our community forum as well.
Absolutely.
Is that there is a need, yet it's not being filled. And to rely on the principal to be doing behavior intervention on a regular basis is an unrealistic fix to a systemic issue.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the presentation that there's a lot that happens before that, so that's probably like the end of the line as the principal is coming in to do some of that work. I would hope anyway. I guess my question was more, you know, as a board, we want to know that the budget we're putting forward is giving you all and our kiddos the best chance at developing as a whole child, right? And having the system be healthy. So if this MTSS model with its ability to still be flexible and learning to be done and capacity to be built and fidelity to be built, if that feels like the direction we're going, I'm still comfortable with what we've done with the budget. I just want to know, and I want the board to know that you all have that same idea, that that's where we're headed as a district.
I think what's hard sometimes is when you have like those, maybe the tip top of that triangle, like extreme kiddos that just can't regulate, you know, and we're throwing everything at it. I mean, that's not the right analogy, but like every resource within the building and district that we have, and it's still hard, and maybe, you know, but we're giving it a try. It's like that first slide that talks about, you know, all kids. You know, it's not they come through the door, oh, it's hard, you know, we're gonna go someplace else. We're gonna do everything we can to help them be successful. If it then becomes like, wow, this is hard, every resource is going towards that student. All of a sudden, you know, because we're shifting, something might be left out over here because we are shifting and shuffling in that moment. That's when it's like, okay, what now what do we do? You know, I mean, when kids need like a more therapeutic environment, I mean, there's not always anywhere else to go. So we're just kind of trying to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, certain profiles are hard, certainly. And that's part of the job. It's my 11th year as principal in 3 different schools in 3 different states, along with my AP world. And like, there's always really hard situations. It's not like abnormal or just here. Like, and they're always tough, always, you know, like we certainly lack certain things that's real. Like, it is what it is, but it, you know. 99% of the kids, they enjoy and love their day, and it is our job to take on. The challenge of the school, that's our role. I remind my staff often that I may have had 2 kids who had really tough days, but like I had 130 whatever that had beautiful days. And that's a part of it too. We have a good team here. Beth McGeorge is very supportive when we get to the intensive level and I am pulling my hair out and I want to go hide in a snowbank. You know, Beth is there to support and she does her best to get us stuff, but she's in the same position. Like if I request a BCBA and there's none available, like, what do you do? Right? Like, you know, that gets hard. There certainly have been moments where, geez, I wish I can give a kid direct instruction in this because I think it'll help the specific profile, but like that runs its course. And that's not every year, that's not every day, et cetera. And in those moments, I'm certainly like, man, I wish I had, you know, but that's not often. Like, I'm more concerned about substitutes. And when you want to, you know, when it's hard, like when people don't show up and then I'm really shuffling and then I have a crazy behavior day, that's nuts. And so like, those are the hard days, man. I think we manage well, we do okay. And there's always, I mean, you think of the bell curve, right? There's always the left side of the bell curve, man. Like that's real. Like there are always going to be challenging kids who have crazy lives, who have these disability, whatever, trauma, this, that, like they're going to be hard. And there's no magic CSAC wand or a magic program that's gonna like fix the kid. It takes work, it takes time, it's consistency to get there. And they grow and mature on their own. So that has their profile in K is really different than their profile as a 5th grader. They just have more skills. So. My take.
Liz?
I think that this can also help us understand some of the board's future planning. One thing that we didn't discuss in this particular presentation was the family communication. So like the same thing I can think of as a family member is you get that universal letter, which is the newsletters talking about like how there's a corner where friends are working on those skills to talk things out amongst each other first before getting the teacher involved. And then, you know, those different levels all apply for family, kind of understanding the language and supporting them in all of that, right? So that's a whole nother level of support that we provide from home, or can engage to provide from home. Then future planning. Some of the struggles of shuffling staff, I feel like my understanding is that it's really hard when it's from one building to another building that a need arises, right? So if you do have a certain person with a certain skill set at the district, if they're in one school building and the need comes up, you know, on the other side of our district in a different school, it's not just walking down the hallway to meet their needs. They have to, it's a lot trickier to shuffle with the elementary schools being the sizes that they are. So I wonder if that helps us as a board think about future planning. And I appreciate the question about this year's budget. And I think there's so much to think about in the education reform plan that this information you're giving us can help us process those options as well. So I appreciate all of the time you're taking tonight.
Other thoughts? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
If you could just pass your, I think it's when you're finished around so that we can look at it. Or you're collecting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm gonna give people 5 minutes to go ahead and go get some apple crisp out of there and get some coffee, so. Go grab that real quick and then we'll jump into the rest of the. All right, so next is an action item to approve monitoring report 2.4, the financial planning and budgeting monitoring report. Can I get a motion, please? Meredith first?
What's that? Second.
Justin second. Discussion, please.
Okay.
Any thoughts about the monitoring report 2.4?
The only one I had was, I might like if we can on these just check links. Feel like, they did not work on many of them, like to the appendix ones.
Oh.
Are they working now? Some appendix D seems to work. Appendix A isn't, appendix B says files and owner's trash. So, and I'm sure there's probably some challenges of like what user was, but
Yeah.
we may just wanna, and I can get a list at the end, just to update those, but I think they're like really valuable to have in context. It's just sort of a quick link to those.
Yeah.
But otherwise I have no concern.
I don't wanna work on that. They worked when Jennifer sent it to me and I clicked on them because I checked them all. But then something got lost in the switch to a PDF or something, but.
That's
I'll
my
try to
guess,
figure out.
or your user account versus ours or something. But,
Yeah,
It looks like all but D open for me.
well,
You have special access then.
so Southers, okay.
so
We had some issues earlier this afternoon. And Jennifer went in and refreshed. So it's possible if you close it and reopen it, you might get it, or to your point, there may just be a glitch that.
okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Any other thoughts about the report itself? Buddy?
We'll work on the links and we'll resend the report with the links fixed, so that way you can go and check those as you need to.
Yeah, I think honestly, they're just useful for or doing something down the road to be able to come back to us pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
sharing information, so.
And for sure to get them fixed when they're posted to their website.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Okay. So even without those links, people feel like we can move forward with, except, okay.
Yeah.
So based upon the information provided, does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Does the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting monitoring report 2.4, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Great, we'll move down to C, the financial report. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
I have a question. Floyd, thank you for adding details. Yep, so there. Curious about the comment on the building improvement. I just want to make sure that I better understand. So the comment was some projects expected to be covered are the Mount Abraham roof for 500,000 to 600,000 and windows at Bristol Elementary for 250. So the Mount Abraham roof, given that we're going to the community in March for the in and the out on the Capitol, what is this 500 to 600 covering? Like, I want to bridge that gap in understanding what is that for versus.
We're
what we're
expecting the roof to be around $2 million.
Okay, so you're gonna start it now.
And then we
what
want
we're
to
asking
straddle
is
the
for next
2
year.
years
Fine.
with so $1 million
Yep.
coming out of capital. And then straddle the 2 years with balance.
Perfect. I just wanted that kind of out there because I think it's important information.
Yeah, and the 2 years being FY 25 and FY 26, so sort of three sources, 25 money, 26 money, capital reserve money.
Yep.
Together to get the 2 million-ish.
I just, because it's on the ballot. I
Yeah.
wanted it
Yep.
discussed.
Thank you, Floyd.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Move down to what should be D, which is an update of superintendent's report. Any thoughts, questions, concerns? No? Okay. Move down then to the board management and governance section, and I'll start with an action to approve monitoring report 3.3, delegation to the superintendent. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Justin?
Second.
Sorry, Meredith, thank you. Discussion.
I did make one recommendation on policy language 3. States, it uses the word interpretation, but then when you go down to the interpretation, the first bullet says the superintendent is required to define. And so those are two different things. So it was for that reason that I said non-compliance. And I just recommend that we simply change the word from define to interpret in the interpretation. And if you did that, I would report compliance.
That's in the actual policy.
No, just the interpretation, which is not the policy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was told they can't change the interpretations, right? Those are board approved.
Well, we can change those,
Mhm.
but we just have to have a discussion about it. Yeah. And that was, sorry, you said number 3.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Kathy's raising her hand.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you. And welcome back, Erin. We're glad you're well.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I think I was a little confused by the policy language 3, that the superintendent is authorized to establish all further policies. Such decisions of the superintendent shall have full force and authority as if decided by the board. I guess I'm a little confused about the separation of roles here.
I think that's assuming the executive limitations
In the ends.
and the ends.
Sorry, what bullet point are you referring to, Kathy? Number,
Narrative at the top of policy number 3.
Policy language 3. So we could have clarification on such decisions of the superintendent shall have full force and authority as if decided by the board. When the superintendent acts only as the superintendent, not with the authority of the board at any point. Is that correct, or am I misinterpreting policy governance?
I think this is sort of trying to, in a way, almost define the way policy governance works, right? So in policy governance, the board establishes obviously all the policies, but in particular for the superintendent, the board sets the ends and the executive limitations. So the board says, superintendent, we direct you to achieve these outcomes, the ends, and you can achieve those outcomes in any way that you see fit, so long as you don't violate any of these executive limitations. So this is sort of describing those conditions, right? So that as superintendent, I have the authority of the board to do whatever I deem necessary as long as it doesn't violate the executive limitations in my pursuit of achieving the ends. I think that's effectively what this is saying.
and I think the trip might be that it's using the word policies as if Patrick's going to implement policies, which he doesn't, but he does use procedures to support those policies. So I think that's just maybe what's tricky about how this is written,
Mhm.
is that he has the authority to establish procedures to meet those things, but not necessarily to change or implement new policies to do so.
I think I would appreciate to have that wording somewhere in here.
Yeah, I wonder about that language. But I wrote it in our questions and comments section here to look at. And perhaps there's updated language somewhere.
So I think I would move to table action on this particular review until we have further information on that.
I'm not confident that that would be something we could find quickly. Or find an answer to quickly, Kathy. If I was confident that perhaps this would live in the VSBA somewhere and I could find language that negates this or changes this, then I would agree with you for tabling it. But I think this is actually probably gonna involve maybe some legal advice, cause I'm not confident that that this will live somewhere in the VSBA. So this might actually take some digging and some legal conferring to figure out. But I don't think that I don't think the interpretation, and I don't think what Patrick and his team are doing is creating policy. So I think the practice of what we're doing is correct. I think it's just the language that we're tripped on.
It's the choice of that
The
word
choice of
policies
that
and how
word.
it's applied here versus our application of
Right.
the board owned all policies.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I was confident I could change this and have a good answer for you in a month, I would agree. I'm not confident in that.
So is there any
Um,
reason that we have to have it within a month?
Just to stay on schedule with how we're doing our monitoring reports,
Well, can I also just jump in?
Yeah.
I wonder also about precedent of establishing a monitoring report, and then at the time of evaluating the monitoring report, changing the policy
mm,
in association with the monitoring report, like.
That
If
was
that,
what I
if
was
that's
saying, two
the,
different things.
if that, they feel like very different things, because
Yeah.
if that's the practice that we fall into as a board, then effectively any policy doesn't mean anything because it can be changed at the moment of monitoring.
Mhm.
I would argue that it makes much more sense to, however flawed, and I think I agree with Kathy and the other concerns that are raised in the language and the policy itself. However flawed that may be, I still think that has to be the basis for this monitoring report.
Yeah.
But like other things that we've done in the past, we can use that to kickstart better practice for the next year. But if we feel flexibility in changing the policy and then amending our monitoring, well, then we get to rewrite the rules as we see fit to fit our monitoring. And it feels like we're playing a shell game at best.
I actually, so this whole that thought process actually this is my first monitoring report, crossed my mind when I was doing it. And that's kind of what I thought, Mike, was that's not the purpose of what I'm doing right now. I'm seeing if we're adhering to what is currently approved. And then talk to Aaron about, with the questions I had, like, well, can we change this? What about this? So to me, it felt like two different things.
And the past practice has been that the board would typically accept a monitoring report that has non-compliance and is accompanied with a plan to become compliant. And then the work is between now and this monitoring report next year that plan is implemented, and for the next cycle, we can report compliance. So that has happened multiple times for other policies in the past.
So how do we track that? I think my concern is this: if we keep approving these monitoring reports, but I don't see any other action happening once we've approved them, even if they're in non-compliance. So how do we track that?
So I have this sheet, the monitoring report sheet that we use for tracking how either if we've accepted the report or whatever, and what things need to be changed or looked at on that monitoring report or policy for next time. I also made a note so that policy and governance can look at this and start to do some work on that. So we've got it in two places about what we're gonna do. Yeah, Brad.
Well, I mean, I think even the document speaks for itself. I
Yeah.
mean, because it reports non-compliance, it self-tracks. So
Mhm.
whoever's doing the report next year will see that, and obviously we'll need to deal with it.
Well, we've kicked it down the road for another whole year.
Well,
And
I
then
mean,
we're
that's not,
well, that's not exactly right, because I think, Aaron, or, the chair, we assign the monitoring reports over the course of the summer, if I'm not mistaken.
but also it could be that policy and governance does work on this particular policy, and it comes to you mid-year. And so you're not actually waiting until next February to see this policy again. You see it mid-year with the changes. So it's not a full year. Or I don't suspect it will be.
And also the monitoring reports typically are a reflection of the past year. And so the reality is, this is the truth of the past year. And we want it to be a different truth this time next year. And so we need to set a course to correct that and make those changes and be in a different place next year. So we can't really, this is, I think to your point, Mike, that we can't change it now. It is what it is. And we recognize that there's something that needs to change, and we're gonna make the efforts to make that change and reflect differently next year.
So it might not feel comfortable, Kathy, but I think that's where we're at in terms of this monitoring report and then the future work on it.
Aaron, just for my own understanding, maybe other people already know this. What is the, I know you're the charge for why am I burning a blank on the committee?
Angie?
Yes, policy and governance. So are you guys tracking these like on a, I visualize like a spreadsheet.
On the monitoring reports?
Yeah,
So,
like in a
Actually-
systematic way. Based on.
well, we
like-
have it in the board work plan, right? So the board work plan has when each monitoring report is due, and then on top of each agenda, we have who's responsible for that report. This book and all the monitoring reports live with Jennifer. So she keeps these pages, and then all the monitoring reports she has. So if you ever wanted to see them, she could certainly give them to you. So we have a way to track them and keep them, but policy and governance itself does not track or keep the monitoring reports. We're more focused on the policy itself, which is what we're tripped up on right now is the actual policy language, so.
So how
monitoring
does that
report-
come in front of you? Like,
It
how
just
do you-
did.
Okay, got it. That's kind of
So-
what I'm trying to I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out your system
Yeah,
for
so
like how you prioritize and choose what you're gonna work on.
We'll go over that when we get to the
Okay.
policy and governance of it. But, because there's some stuff on that, but effectively what just happened is the board said, we recognize something's not right, and so now it's a priority
Okay.
for what we're.
So, having done this, I felt like I was going into a bubble of cotton. And I'd like to put in a request, I don't know if this is the right time, but that there be some sort of training on what the protocol is to write or edit, or, it's confusing to me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. Noted.
And we do have a discussion on board policy
do.
governance training, and that
Yep.
sort of writing and monitoring reports can be a component of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on this before I ask the questions? Okay. Based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no? Did the data Did the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no? And I have the questions and comments as looking at the interpretation, changing the definition in number 3 and looking at the policy language of number 3. And it will be on the P&G work plan. Okay, all those in favor of accepting monitoring report A 3.3 delegation to the superintendent, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you. Any abstentions? Passes, okay. Okay. Next, we'll go down to an action item to approve monitoring report 4.2, board job description. Can I have a motion, please? Kylie?
A second.
I'm gonna give it to Kristen. Justin, you've been on a roll. Discussion, please.
Maybe if I may, one big thing that I noticed is that there's no way to assess what we're doing. It's just, we can report what we're doing from year to year, what might be new or changed. And is that necessary?
So like, how are we communicating out what we're doing? You mean?
Yeah, yeah. But I'm trying to find the place where I put it in here. I think the reason I put partial compliance in the places that I did was because I didn't have any criteria to bump it up against. And I felt like a lot of our year was spent on the budget. And that you, that, not you, but, where is it? The ownership linkage policy was just passed, so we haven't had a lot of time to implement what's been outlined in that policy. So. And how do we assess that? Like when we get to the point of writing the monitoring report? It
Yeah.
seems ambiguous to me.
So I guess some of it is how many community events we host. We can even draw from things like, community engagement, for example, and how they've reached out. We could talk about the front porch forum posts we do, the Up for Learning work we've brought community together for. Things that are sort of, anytime we're reaching out to the community, like we just created the front porch forum things, right? The board has taken responsibility for communicating that stuff out. So that would be one of those things that I'd say, here's some evidence as us working toward having better communication about that. But we also have our agenda links, the recordings of our meetings, like there are other things to sort of prove what the board work has been. But I agree with you that the idea that we're somehow measuring ourselves against the ends is where we're falling short.
Right.
And some of it is, we only have one way of doing that right now, which is through the superintendent. We just haven't created any sort of board structure around how we're holding ourselves accountable for that outside of what our superintendent's doing. But hopefully, part of the work will be getting an ends policy where we have really clear ways that we're showing ourselves what we're looking for, as well as the superintendent. So I agree with that. Any other thoughts about 4.2? All right, based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Does the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor of accepting monitoring report 4.2, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Okay. All right, next we'll go down to action item C, which is to approve for posting policies D3, D4, D5, and D6. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
All right, Kathy, and then Melissa, do you want a second?
Sure, second.
Okay. Discussion, please.
Sorry, I didn't hear who the second was on that one.
Melissa, Lori.
Thank you.
Any discussion? So I guess on the policy and governance side of things, we heard that you all wanted us to track the changes that we do each time we're amending a policy. And we're gonna beg for forgiveness at this exact moment, because when we updated these four, we forgot to add those track changes in. But what you'll notice in our policy and governance procedure list is that we've amended our spreadsheet so that we're actually gonna put the track changes from each policy directly into the worksheet that we have. So we'll link that in our agenda, and we can link it to the business meeting agendas too, so that you can actually go through and read what those changes are. It's really hard because what we tend to do is have a draft, a working draft of the policy, and then a finalized draft of the policy, so that we're not amending what's currently up and available. So when we do track changes, it's hard to sort of demonstrate the track changes in that way. But if we just highlighted them for you in this one format, not only will we know what we've changed, but you all can see that too. And you'll also be able to see the working draft that we have available, which has always been true, but we'll make sure that the most current working draft is available in here. You'll see when it was posted for warning and then when it's adopted, so you can actually see the trajectory of each policy. So we've heard you, we're sorry about these particular ones, but going forward, we have a different way of capturing all that for you. Any other thoughts, concerns, or questions about any of those policies? No? Okay, all those in favor of approving for posting policies D3, 4, 5, 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay. I'll move down to discussion, which is about the superintendent evaluation process. Did anyone else here attend in January the VSBA's presentation on that? I know some people had,
I
you
did.
did, okay, had expressed interest in going. So we, as a board, have felt pretty much felt that we're lacking something in our superintendent evaluation, that we're not quite getting the picture we're hoping for, that there's some more information that we're looking to get. And so I attended the VSBA's discussion, and I was a little bit shocked about what they offered, because first, I guess I was under the impression that superintendents are supposed to be evaluated. I guess that's not necessarily true. But now it's gonna be policy starting July 1, so we're ahead of the game there, I guess. But then two, the framework that they offered is it was kind of small. It was, wasn't as extensive as I was thinking it might be.
Not the same thing.
Did you? So what they offered was, having sort of a small cohort of people who are closest to the superintendent doing the evaluation and not looking to get information from everyone. So it would be the board who would do an evaluation, and then those closest to the superintendent. So those who work sort of directly with him. So I'm thinking like the admin team and maybe building principals would be kind of as far out as that would go. And then they offered their sort of framework, so how they, what sort of goals they measure superintendents against. So VSBA does this as you can hire them to come do this. But I think what I had gathered from the board and sort of my own thinking was, we really want to tie the ends policy, what we're asking the superintendent to achieve, to the evaluation framework we build. So that when we're looking for growth opportunities, that they're inherently linked, right? We're not asking our superintendent to grow in places where it doesn't make sense. So without, and to complicate that even further, I don't think our ends policy meets our requirements. So building an evaluation tool based on what's currently available, we could do, knowing that we'll have to do that again when we update the ends policy. But I guess I just wanted to, with that sort of verbal outburst of information towards you, gather some initial thoughts about what kind of things might we want to see as we're building an evaluation tool, or what things might you consider when building one? So that when we are at a point where we're starting to build something, that it lands somewhere that makes good sense. Have any initial thoughts?
I'm curious to hear from Patrick, what is helpful for, what would be most helpful for you?
You know, it's interesting when I think about sort of where the conversation went around, I think it's 2.2, the treatment of staff, and we had some conversations about what's the circle of input we want to gather, what feels right. We made a change this most recent year around 2.2 to bring that circle in a little closer to not just me, to everyone that the survey was administered to. The most notable change were to central office folks, that rather than all 300 whatever employees, that it's the circle that's most closely connected, that has the more direct working knowledge that can provide feedback that is useful to influence change. So in that regard, I like what the VSBA is saying, that's sort of where the depth of feedback that could be most useful could be sourced. How that's sourced and what sort of tool and questions, etc. Very open to what feels right. I also like the connection to the ends, because that is ultimately what this is about, right? Like the work is about improving outcomes for students, which is driven by the ends and the metrics that we look to say whether we're there or not. As Aaron pointed out, like the ends are okay as they are, but they could be a lot better. And I think the work we're doing with UP will inform that. You know, I'm thinking about the monitoring report that you just wrote, like that speaks to the work with UP and driving that ends work. So that all makes sense to me, right? It's about the ends, it's feedback from the folks that I work most closely with to lead this organization toward those ends. And sort of what's going well, what can we do better in our pursuit of that?
Things that we might consider as we're thinking about building this tool. Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I think last year when we were going through this, we talked about this extensively and thought about a way that we could create a survey of all staff, not just the ones that are most insular to the superintendent, but to get feedback from all staff. And if we're really going to look at a 360, then we need to include parents and community members as well. And I think that's really what we're hearing from community, is that they need to have some input. They want to be heard. And the superintendent is the leader of the teaching in the district and drives the budget. So it's important, I think, that all those voices are heard somehow. And I think we're very clear that we wanted a survey, but how we did that, you know, I think we were hoping the VSBA would have something for us on how to do that. It doesn't sound like it did.
No, not at all. And in fact, any mention of the getting a greater swath of information was sort of like not even in consideration. And I wonder too about that. Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
It wasn't focused towards school districts that use PNG, right? Remember, I asked that question I was the one who asked that question at the end, and they're like, well, you can.
Yeah.
Trying to remember the exact question. And so I guess my question is not only knowing this, school districts that don't use PNG, do they have ends policies, or do they call it something else, or what do they use or work off of?
Yeah.
Because taking that in consideration, knowing that their primary audience wasn't using PNG.
I think they use their strategic plans as sort of guidelines. So like the one that Middlebury just put out that covers 24 through 29, there's pretty clear guidelines as to what metrics they want to be. And I think that's what the superintendent is measured against. They're not in policy and governance from what I understand. So I think when she's measured, she'll be measured against those things, like, did we meet this objective and how did we meet it and what's the data behind that? So I think they often use that kind of thing. For us, there certainly can be, when we create the new ends policy, different things we consider within that. So if we decided it was really important that we had a financial goal, or really important we had a strategic plan goal, or had some other type of goal baked in there, we can do that. So it's just what information do we need in order to say, yes, our superintendent is meeting X, Y, and Z. Here's how we know that. And then here are the areas where we need to start really putting some attention into to get where we'd like to be.
And I think to that point of policy and governance, so strictly speaking, in a policy and governance sort of situation, the superintendent is exclusively evaluated against the monitoring reports that are measuring compliance with policies that the board sets out, specifically the ends and executive limitations. That's it. We're talking about sort of branching out from that, which I think can be really helpful. And we should acknowledge we're branching away from what is quite prescribed in the policy and governance realm, which is probably why they're pretty wishy-washy about, well, you can, except policy and governance says this is how you measure the performance of your superintendent, and it's through monitoring reports.
Although if our ends policy changes, we're still evaluating you against that. So
Exactly.
It's not, we're not branching out too far. It's just what type of questions do we need to put in, or objectives do we need to put into the ends policy to get the answers we're looking for.
Yeah, the branching out for me was more the surveys and the other
surveys,
mechanisms to gather feedback, to evaluate, because that's really prescribed. But sure, the board gets to write the ends as it sees fit, and the board gets to write the executive limitations as it sees fit. And I'm then responsible to adhere to those and provide monitoring reports that offer evidence that I either am or am not, and have a plan to do so.
Liz?
So I didn't see the one that you went to, but I did watch the one about how boards drive change in their district. And it reminded me of the statewide initiative to improve reading outcomes. So I think what it might, to my understanding, what it would look like is us looking at our ends policy, coming up with a specific goal, short of having the strategic plan in place, which would do that exact thing. And then saying this is an area where we want to really focus our resources. And we've kind of done that with the social emotional learning. And then looking at our data and seeing whether or not there's any improvement in that specific area year over year. Because the ends policy is so broad that it's almost like if we were to you can't focus on significant growth in so many areas. So the way that how a board drives improvement in their district explained it, really just choosing an area of focus. And that makes sense. So when there's that goal to focus on reading, and we got the supports in place to pick up a new curriculum, and that took time. And then from the presentations that we've had or seen, there are improvements, or the All Learners Network around the math work in the elementary schools. That also would be another example, I think, of picking an area and then saying we really want to see over time how the strategies that are being used to improve student outcomes are working or not working.
And this sort of touches on a challenge that we face in education, that there are so many things we could be focusing our energy on at any one point in time. Picking one makes a lot of sense. And if we use that literacy example, identifying literacy as a target area, making sure we have budgeted resources to improve in that area, then we secure those resources and we get the training in place and we plan a new curriculum and we put those practices in place. It's a few years of working on that one thing to achieve the kind of results that we might want to see. And so then it's really hard. So, okay, are we only going to really work on literacy for 3 years? And what about math? And what about SEL? And what, like, so then that we start to have these competing interests and priorities, and then trying to manage the resources it takes to really intently push those things forward, compounded by the fact that many of our teachers, K-6, are teaching literacy and social studies and science and math, and there's a constant SEL support. So it becomes a challenge to deliver on that. And some folks only teach math. And if our focus is literacy for 3 years, then how do we continue to support those folks that are teaching math? So it starts to get complicated, but conceptually, picking focus areas is the way to go. That's what you saw us do with the last iteration of the strategic plan. There were multiple objectives within different goal areas, and we picked, out of I think 13 objectives, we picked 2 to really focus our energies around. We built professional development plans around that, and so that has been our effort in the past to really focus. But even those 2 that we picked have so much that we're involved in those, that we spent all of the time that we've been working on the strategic plan on those 2 objectives alone. So it's a challenge that isn't going away, and one that we need to continue to strategize around.
So for me, given all this and this really helpful conversation, it feels like we need after, ends that make sense. But just holding you to the ends in itself is probably not a sufficient way of assessing a superintendent, given the complexity and the nuance of actually achieving those ends. And so there I could see the value of having thoughtful and focused questions towards those who are closest with you, because that would give perspective on what are the steps that you've actively been sort of directing to help get us to those ends. It would provide context for where we are relative to the ends on a smaller time scale than waiting for yes or no after 3 years, are the scores this. So I could see kind of marrying, this is the overall thing that we're tracking year in and year out. We're getting feedback from those who are directly, working with you closely because they have the most insight into what happens day to day. But then not discount Kathy and others who've sort of talked about kind of just the role within the community. I could see perhaps being thoughtful about a different subset of questions that we direct more broadly, that talk about public perception or district perception, that talk about communication. These I think are all valuable attributes for any superintendent, and it'd be valuable for us to know where we're doing well and where we're not, knowing, of course, that in the end, it's not a popularity contest. We can't be saying, was it yes or no from that survey or not, but seeing maybe themes within it that we might think about as, areas of improvement, things like that, but not necessarily asking those same questions that we ask the people who work with you day in, day out, because the familiarity with what you actually do won't be there. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like kind of just a whole multi-tiered support. I mean, this is what we're doing essentially here, is we're scaffolding what's the old end goal, what's the information at the intermediate level, and then what are some of this ancillary support as well.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, I had been thinking about something similar, and I was trying to figure out a way, how do you assimilate all of that? Because I don't feel like we can put an evaluation, it can't all be all concrete, but we need some concrete pieces, and we need some other types of evaluations that support that hold up the concrete, because there are different vantage points and you have to show the whole picture versus just one part of it. I think that's really critical. So,
And I can see the Up for Learning initiative, whatever the final product is, using that to help guide the, question the community on what, we'll know what's important to them. We might know what questions to ask to see if that's being done.
And the intent is to continue our work with Up for Learning after the portrait of the learner is done, and then to launch from that into strategic planning and a much more active role for the board in that strategic planning process this time around. So there are, I think, some opportunities both in the kind of rewording of the ends, but also in the building of the strategic plan to set some of those objectives and really think about some measurable goals and just think differently about that than we did this last time around for strategic planning.
Kathy, I saw your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I appreciate this dialogue, and I want to be incredibly respectful that this is not a personality witch hunt. But I feel very strongly that any position in our district is not solely held to an ends report. That we have to look at what the whole interpersonal communication is with the district, and how supported do those teachers and those administrators and the secretarial staff really feel by the administration. That's where I come from, and that's what I'd like to see in an expanded evaluation that's not just looking at an ends report or a strategic plan, because one of the critical elements of any strategic plan is having effective administrators that are respected and are good communicators. And I want to ensure that we are supporting our administrators in being just that.
Thank you. Okay, I have some notes about what to think about as we're building this, but does anyone have any last? Throw them out there, see what sticks. All right, so as we're building this, I'll continue to just share what's sort of coming up, what we have available, and then hopefully as we build the strategic plan and the ends policy, we'll have more to talk about as we're building. Okay.
Can I ask one quick question, Erin? Are we abandoning or not revisiting the idea of the 360 at all?
No, that's not, I don't think we're abandoning any ideas. I think what we're trying to do is really hone in on what type of evaluation makes sense. Because we are sort of bound by the idea of the monitoring reports for the end policy as a policy and governance structure, but knowing that we're trying to look at that ends policy and say, what would make good sense so that we can ask questions that get us where we need to be. So it's not an abandonment of a comprehensive evaluation. It's more, how do we bring that idea of what we're looking for into the structure we have so that so it's not arbitrary, right? We're not trying to piecemeal this together. It's documented. This is how we do this. This is the structure we use. This is who we ask and what we ask. And not an abandonment, but like, let's put it on paper and put it into practice, what we're doing.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. I'm gonna move on to discussion item E, which is a board policy governance training, but also looking for ideas. So we got how to write monitoring reports is one idea of what might be helpful for training. We also have continued policy and governance trainings we can do. We have some resources from VSBA in terms of online courses we can take. Depending on how many board members sign up, we could do more extensive trainings with VSBA for policy and governance. But I'm wondering if there's anything else that feels important that might be gaps in your understanding about how we run, or things that would be helpful to talk about.
I would love like cheat sheets on certain things that are really important, like open meeting law and how not to violate it. I guess. There's more, like this is the role of the board and this is not in the role, like don't do this and do this.
Did you get the new board member packet?
I did. It was very helpful, but
okay, I'd love to know more about that and what we could add to that to because that's what I'm hoping that board member packet does for you. It sort of eliminates those gaps, so I'd love to touch base with you about how we make that better.
Really just add the stuff about the open meeting law. That would be.
I will double check, but I'm fairly certain I put something in there, but I will
Thank you.
make sure it's in there. Okay. Any other ideas? Other ideas are bad.
Is there some secret to keeping board meetings to 2 hours?
I wish.
Just make motions really fast like Justin.
Some boards set time limits, Kathy, so we could say, we're not gonna discuss this for any more than 10 minutes. That feels heavy. I don't wanna police that, but if someone wants to do that, you can go ahead. We're doing okay today. Any other ideas?
I don't know if there is training in this area, but given sort of just the overall state affairs and education in the state itself, in the country, and our sort of understanding that is likely to be big change. I don't know what kind of training there is about like how to effectively implement change. But I feel like a lot of what we do is react and try to deal with like the thing that's thrown in front of us at the moment, and that's all well and good and necessary. But I don't know, maybe it's my own failing, but I don't really know like what's the effective way? Like what would be the ideal steps for us to take? Be it through community engagement or be it through our own internal processes. Have a chance of moving forward. And I think the district has tried to move forward a number of times in the last 10 years. And it hasn't occurred at the ballot. And I wonder if they're training to help us be more effective, or well, maybe that doesn't happen, right? And maybe those efforts were as effective as could be, and they just didn't end up aligning with where people were at the time.
But there's a component to policy and governance training about future focused boards, and that's sort of a mantra of policy and governance, is the idea of being future focused. That could be something that the resources that the VSBA has around policy and governance specifically could really address specifically. I think it touches on at least some of what you're talking about, and there may be some additional components that we'd need to look at to fully address what you just stated.
Yeah, something along those lines, feelings. I like a little optimism, right? Like
Some of it too is let's maybe have less to react to at some point, like
Yeah.
there's.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just thinking, we're in flux all the time. We're getting new members. And we're losing seasoned members who have a lot of knowledge, and I think it's really difficult for new members to even come up to speed with the process. And so how do we do that to not necessarily speed it up, but somehow embrace and encourage that
So,
newness, so it's not off-putting.
so what I've done is I've built a new, I was gonna say new employee orientation. No, I built a new board member packet. And in that packet, it has pretty much anything a new board member would need to know. So when Meredith joined, it had the top 10 most pertinent things we've been working on. When if there's any new turnover, I'll go through and I'll redo that packet to say, here are the new top 10 things we've been doing, what's the most pertinent, with links to all the things. I will double check to make sure like the open meeting law stuff is there, how to be a board member, VSBA resources. So that's been something I created, because I agree that when I was on board, I was like, cool, I'll just spend 2 years doing nothing but listening and figuring out where we are, versus, if you get that packet and you attend to it, and then you get time to sit with Patrick, myself, and Floyd to go over what's going on. That type of onboarding will give a new board member the best chance at hitting the ground running and not feeling the overwhelm that I think many of us started with. So that's been a change I've done, which is hopefully will continue to get better at meeting the goal of making sure that we're effectively on board. Yeah,
It's a great packet. Thank you.
I can make it better. Just let me know. Any other training ideas.
Can you read what you?
Yes, so how to write monitoring reports, continue training on policy and governance. The cheat sheets, so making sure that we have accessible information about like open meeting law, how to be a board member, and then effectively implementing change or having a future focus. Yeah, okay, so I can start collecting resources and figuring out how to implement some of these. Knowing that in March, you know, we're waiting to see how the dust settles, so I'm not gonna put a training on your schedule for right now, but this will be probably April, maybe timeframe, we start to look at how to do that.
It may be less of a training, but I'm thinking about the state context and everything that's in flux there and curious in terms of an understanding. I mean, there's a lot of resources, there's videos on the on the AOE website, on the VSBA is putting things out, VSA is putting things out, so there's a lot out there, which is great and overwhelming at the same time. What, I guess I'm interested in hearing what interest the board has in digesting that, having conversations.
I appreciate you mentioning something, and I almost said that, but it wasn't policy and governance training, so I didn't bring it up. But I would. It's a lot, and so to try to piece it together and remember what is what.
And it's changing daily, like the information is evolving pretty rapidly, but each month there'd be plenty to talk about what happened this past month, so. And it will take time, like I think acknowledging that reality, it is complex and that it doesn't help the 2-hour time limit that we were talking about before, for sure.
Well, I wonder if I had a section in my chair notes where I just said, and here's what the state's up to today, and put it in our chair notes for each business meeting, and then at least you'd have what's up to date for this month. So we could at least track some of that.
And I could help
And then,
with some of that too.
right,
Yeah.
and then if there was something really like, this is gonna affect MAUSD tomorrow, then we could pull that out and talk about that. Cause I think you're right that until there's stuff on paper about how this is all gonna flush out, it's all just like up in the, percolating, so.
And what I can do in addition to that, so I'm providing testimony on Thursday to the House Education Committee. So I'm working on drafting that testimony now, so I'll have that in writing that I'll share with you ahead of time and say, basically, here's what I'm gonna say on Thursday, so you'll at least know from me what that is. So I can keep you looped in that regard, and there are lots of other people giving lots of testimony on lots of things. In House Ways and Means, House Ed, Senate Finance, government operations, like. This education work is the big work of this session, and lots of people are involved in different ways, so that's what makes it as complicated to stay on top of as it is, but
Good luck.
thanks.
Liz?
Yeah, I'd appreciate any updates that you have of things as you understand them as they come along. And I think that we've noticed at our community engagement meetings recently, as we were planning the one for the budget, this last one, right? The question that we had was related to what was going on at the state level. So I think in order for us to not only as school board members have a sense of things, have discussions, I think that's appreciated, right? I think it's appreciated, and maybe we could even send feedback to the state level of what we're hearing in our community about the change. I don't know, like there's got to be a way, and I'm not really sure as we're looking to have future focused conversations. I think that's the conversations that they're having up there now are like, this might be our opportunity to have our perspectives as a board and some of I know that they already got priorities from so many people and have done so much engagement, but I don't see that there's a way to separate any conversations we're having in our community aside from the reforms being discussed up there. And yes, it would be a lot easier to know what was going to happen and then talk about it. Absolutely. But since we're not in that moment, there is that unique opportunity as well to get some feedback, right? Like how you're testifying, it's okay that things aren't decided yet, because that means that it's a moment where there's still a chance to think about it together. I don't know.
Yeah, and I will just share too that this was after I'd already put my chair notes in, but district leaders from all 4 districts in Addison County, so all the superintendents, the financial managers, some board chairs, and three or 4 representatives from Addison County had a meeting.
Senators and reps.
And
yeah.
senators and, yeah, had a meeting to discuss sort of exactly what you're talking about, Liz, like how do we share ideas and how do we advocate? How do we bring ideas forward that go to the state level, as they're making decisions? So that work is happening sort of on the back end, I guess, and not really in a public facing way, which, you know, we could probably do better about saying we are doing some of that, because I think it's important to put out there that we aren't just sitting and waiting for stuff to happen to us, right? We're putting in some input, bringing people to us. And there's some interest across the 4 districts to sort of come up with a way to have a voice to say what makes good sense for districts of this size, or how might, what are the implications if we try to push all this together, or, you know, what are some considerations we need to make when we're thinking about reducing 100 million out of a budget, right? Like, there's a lot of nuance to what the state has proposed, and the district leaders in this county, I know for sure, are working really hard to make sure this voice is heard. So there's some comfort in that, and knowing that that work is happening, even if it's not directly from this board table, that work is happening.
And important to know that there, at least in the eyes of some, the Addison County perspective is a valuable one because of the efforts throughout the county in recent years to look at consolidation and mergers, and we've had withdrawals, and we've experienced.
Resources.
Right, sharing
already.
resources. So we've attempted, at least, we've done some things, we've attempted other things, that are in line with the concept of the governor's proposal. So we've tested the waters a bit, and we have an understanding of like, how might communities react to this, and how, like, so we have an experience that is valuable as they're contemplating things that we've explored on a larger scale. So that's valuable. And I also know that through our respective organizations, we can advocate to the state as well. So if this board wanted to send a message to VSBA, not necessarily directly to AOE, but through VSBA, say, here's something you think, that's a mechanism. I'm a trustee for the Vermont Superintendents Association. So through that, I'm advocating, as well as my own individual testimony for the Addison County perspective. So there are a lot of different ways to make your voice heard. And Aaron talked about some of the less formal ones where there's just sort of an informal, let's talk about what we think about this whole thing, which is what we've had several of those with legislators.
Okay. All right. We good to move on to an update, which is F, which is the superintendent support letter, which I had sent out to all of you in both a draft form and a finalized form. So what's happened in the past is that the board chair has read it out loud during a board meeting, so it's out and recorded, so I'll do that, and then if anyone has anything to say or doesn't want to say anything, that's cool too. So I'm just gonna read it. Dear MAUSD community, we, the MAUSD Board of Trustees, are writing to inform you of the board's position regarding the continued employment of Patrick Green as the superintendent of Mount Abraham Union School District. After careful consideration and evaluation, the board supports the ongoing leadership of Superintendent Green. As part of our commitment to ensuring effective governance, the superintendent is regularly evaluated using a clear and structured policy and governance model. This process includes evaluation of monitoring reports submitted by the superintendent and the board's feedback to them. The evaluation of the superintendent likens district performance to leadership, so the better the district is performing, the better the leadership is. Through the current monitoring system, the board finds satisfactory evidence of leadership. We want to share that the board is currently in the process of developing a new and enhanced evaluation framework. This updated process will operate more like a comprehensive evaluation that incorporates feedback from the board and various stakeholders while reflecting values related to education leadership best practice. This tool will allow us to measure the growth of our superintendent, ensure that the evaluation process is transparent and fair, and that goals for the superintendent are aligned with our long-term vision for the district. We look forward to continued collaboration with Patrick and moving our district forward and working toward observable improvements in student outcomes and district success. And that's submitted by me, Aaron Jipner, the MAUSD Board Chair, and the rest of you on the letter as Board of Trustees. You're welcome. All right, update from negotiations.
Continue to negotiate, we've been meeting a lot, which I think is really nice, so almost weekly at times, and so we continue to make progress. I think there was an official update that came out like a week ago, but essentially it said we continue to negotiate. Okay.
Updates from finance and facilities.
Sure. Just going. We had a very nice meeting, actually. We approved a finalized budget flyer. That's already at the printer and I think was slated to go out soon, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we'll be in mailboxes later this week.
Yeah, so for that, we really, as we talked about, tried to condense some of the information and actually did so further. And then we talked about the list of resources that we would have available on the MAUSD website, so that if people wanted more information on the condensed version, they could readily access that. I think that was the bulk of our meeting. I think maybe establishing an idea that we would have a regular facilities update at those meetings as well. So future updates at the full board, we'll probably also talk about capital improvement plans and facilities, so that we do both facilities and finance moving forward.
I may just mention at this point that I've had a couple of news outlets reach out, asking questions about budgets or doing stories around regional budgets and things. So I've shared that draft flyer that will be going out because I think it touches on the highlighting points that they're most interested in. So that it's out there in that regard. See, there may be, I think 7 days was one and maybe Digger was the other. So there may be reference to our budget in some of those outlets.
And perfect, if people need additional clarity on those, right, certainly reach out to me or anybody else on facilities and finance, and we're happy to provide that. There's also a kind of more detailed version of a similar flyer that's posted or will be posted on the MAUSD website. So we'll have both the one that went out to everybody and then one that's like a little bit more fleshed out, but is a little wordy. It has like the actual official articles and things like that. So those resources can also be really valuable if you need a little bit more information to help support if people come to you with questions.
Could you send those to me so we can push them out on Front Porch Forum?
Yes.
What's the timing to have them loaded on the website?
So we're putting the finishing touches on that now. Jennifer's been working on that. We expect to have that on the website tomorrow, and Jennifer's going to be printing the annual reports tomorrow and getting those out to, the hope is to print those tomorrow and deliver them to town clerks so that there are some printed, and then that will also be on the website. So tomorrow's the goal.
Before the flyer hits the mailbox.
That's
so.
exactly what we're
I
shooting
just
forward to.
clicked it.
That's, nope, that's the pressure that we're feeling too.
Yeah, I was gonna put the link in my board highlights, so that's why I was.
Yeah, and what we'll do, there'll be a pop-up on the website. So as soon as somebody goes to the website, like you see those other things, it's go here for budget information. We'll bring them right to it.
Also considering doing one of those voice messages again to just remind people about. Cause our annual meeting's a little wonky this year. It's not quite aligned with how we've done it in the past, so doing voice thingy for reminders of that, but also like. Anything else that we might feel important, but mostly just to remind people to vote and to. That our annual meeting is a different date and time. Thank you, Mike. Policy and governance update.
Yeah, I can give it a shot.
Okay.
Yeah, we got this big master spreadsheet that Steve and I'm sure other people contributed to. But one of our goals, especially because Sarah and I are new at this, editing the policies and updating from VISBA. We're trying to make this spreadsheet that we have our workflow easier for the next round of people in the years to come. And also like to help us better understand our workflow as we work with Patrick and Jennifer, and each other to keep our notes in order. So I mean, I think since October, we've made some really good headway with the policies. We've updated a bunch through our business meetings. And then now we have on our agenda 8.83.3 to look into. Probably in spring.
Yeah, we're not gonna meet in March, but in April.
Yeah, so we're just continuing on updating from VSBA, because some of these haven't been adopted since 2018 when the merger happened, so. Been a fun process.
Thank you. Community engagement.
So, big thanks to Mike for leading our virtual roundtable in early February on, more in-depth information on how our budget is formed. The next event we're planning is gonna be likely in May, and it'll be in person, focused on future planning. We are also not meeting in March, so we're hoping to flesh out those details in April.
Okay. That's it. Is there any public comment at this time? All right, I don't see any public comment. Oh, hi, Alan.
Yeah, I was just curious, so how do administrators get evaluated? Who evaluates the administrator? Is there a procedure for the, you don't have to answer it if you want to cut it short, but I'd like to know. And that's what I'm hearing from the community too, that it appears, and I'm not commenting on this, that there are a lot of administrators in a district with 1,100 students. And I think people would also like to know the pupil expenditure. And I think you need to do better explaining that 1,100 students cost approximately $35 million. If you look at the per pupil cost, it doesn't equal what's shown on paper. And so you may need to explain the cost for weighted pupils. So I think that's a big issue, and maybe it did that, maybe it didn't. This is one of the first times I was able to log on without a problem late, but anyways, so I share that with you. Another thing that I'm hearing from the community is we need to do something. So if Patrick's office needs to let the community know in all the towns that it could be done. So I was told that the district is allowed so many all for town communications. Well, I think we need to put the pressure on the front page forum to change this, so people like myself who want to talk to all four towns, whether it be political or education, can do that. And I was hoping that this board, the forum, would know that this is important to the communication, so that other people in the four towns can also share their opinions, and it goes to everybody that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Any other public comment? Yeah, go ahead, Dawn. If you're talking, Dawn, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I would like to know if, I mean, I'm all for the Vermont push for our beliefs. If our federal income tax gets cut off, or our federal income, how much of our school budget is that? If we, and I know the accountant is right there, how much of our budget is supported by the income of the federal? Is it like 500 million? Is it, I mean, not 500 million, 500? Is it, what is it? And if the federal does cut off income to our state and to our town, to our school budget, are the taxpayers expected to absorb that amount of money? And as far as front page forum goes, I don't believe, I believe what the last guy said. Yes, it needs to be more, we should be able to spread stuff across the 4 or 5 towns of our district and be able to say what we want to say. Because anyway, that's it. I'm done.
Thanks, Don. So Alan, I'm happy to email you thoughts about questions, and Don, I'd be happy to reach out to you as well to get you some answers from our business manager.
Well, it is a,
So I'll
There-
send you an email. I'll send you an email, Alan. to
okay,
respond.
well, there is about $6 million in the budget that doesn't come from taxpayers.
Thank you. All right. So we have March meeting preparation. Does anyone feel like they aren't prepared for the March meeting or have any questions about the flow of that meeting or what the expectations are? Everyone feels comfortable about how that meeting's gonna roll out?
I mean, I have
Straightforward?
really no idea, but I guess I'll learn when I
Yeah.
come.
Yep, so the process really just follows what the articles are on our warning.
Okay.
Yeah, so it follows a pretty strict process, and there'll be a moderator there who leads it. It won't be the board. It operates a little bit differently, but not too much. And then our reorganization meeting in March will feel pretty heavy, but just to throw it out there, maybe there'll be turnover. We have some contested seats this time around, so little bit of a fluctuation might be coming down the line, and it sounds like we might have someone interested in the Starksboro seat, so we could potentially have a full board. I'll just throw out there for the sake of throwing it out there that I would be happy to chair again if you all feel comfortable with that. So you would all have to make that decision at the March business meeting to have that continue. But if there's someone else who feels like they're ready to take that on. Yeah, I mean, don't just like shake your head dismally.
That is one sort of quirky thing with the March reorganizational meeting. Since technically it's a new board, I'll call the meeting to order as chair pro tem. And then the first order of business will be to elect a chair, and that's when you can nominate folks. And then once the chair is elected, the meeting is immediately turned over to them.
What date is that? Is it on the calendar? I'm sorry.
Yes, it'll be March.
3rd, 4:30 to 5:30.
Oh,
That's the annual
Yeah,
meeting,
sorry.
yeah.
Just kidding.
March
The
20.
the reorg is the one I was concerned about in case
the
I'm
25th.
reelected. 25th.
Mhm.
Okay.
And here, same time as like a regular board meeting.
Yeah, just call it the reorganization. We'll talk about other things like committee structure, who's on what committee, depending on what the fluctuations are, that kind of stuff, so just getting reorganized.
Looks like we just did that.
It does feel like we just did that.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would that not be March 11th?
And the 25th.
The 25th is when the regular board meeting would be. The 11th is currently when the committees would have been,
Oh,
but typically in lieu of committees, we have the
Oh,
reorganizational
yeah.
meeting and
Yeah.
sometimes a training at that meeting or whatever.
sorry, yeah, you're right, yes. Sorry, it's March 11th is the reorganization meeting, Sarah, sorry, not the 25th. The 25th is our business meeting.
And that's why.
That's
committees-
actually that's much better, actually. I'm glad to hear that it's the 11th. I was afraid I wouldn't get back in time on the 25th if I'm lucky enough to be reelected.
So committees wouldn't then, typically the committees wouldn't meet in March in lieu of this meeting. You could pick a date in addition to this meeting on the 11th, but typically March is reorg meeting, then the business meeting, and then the committees resume in April.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Thank you for that.
All right, Melissa, you have the evaluation up,
Ready to go.
let her rip.
I noticed there was 2 links. Do you want me to
Use the Survey Monkey one.
Got it. That's
you.
the one I have open. Perfect. What is the level of engagement of all board members, high or low?
Hi.
Thank you. Was the agenda followed? Yes or no?
Yes.
Any comments? Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board? Yes.
Yes.
Comments? Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process? Yes.
Yes.
Comments?
Yes.
Any other feedback for the chair?
Thanks for the presentation.
Sure.
That was really valuable.
Thank you, Patrick, and your team.
What went well with the meeting?
We were getting out at 8:45.
Timing.
The SEL presentation. was great.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
I think the start of the discussion about the superintendent's report was super helpful. This is gonna be a long process, I think, especially to figure out what we wanna do versus what the town's gonna want us to do, you know, for feedback and stuff like that.
What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings?
I try to bring food like once a quarter, just to keep y'all coming.
Yeah. Food with coffee, yeah. Yes, Patrick, please send our thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, done.
Okay. Motion to.
Second.
Who seconds? Meredith. All those in favor of adjourning at 8:46 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.